brought forward our case in the strongest of terms. We pointed out to Judge Meenan that other jurisdictions have already heard cases, other countries have already heard cases in a matter of days, and cases have been judged to be unconstitutional, lockdowns have been deemed to be unconstitutional. Now these jurisdictions see the nature of the fact that these laws are causing so much stress and devastation to their populations, and they have acted expeditiously. Not these courts here. They seem to have no problem with the fact that there is so much hardship being inflicted upon the Irish people, and so many articles of Bunreacht na hÉireann are being breached every single day. And that's disturbing. But of course these people here who work in these courts, these people in the fluorescent jackets, they all have their papers. They get into their cars every day and they have their papers. They're not asked any questions. It's business as normal for them. They can go into shops, buy whatever they want. They don't get their trolleys inspected. We just told the judge there of a man who is a friend of John's who was buying paint recently. And the Gardaí came into the shop and told him he had no right to buy paint. This is how crazy. You can be sure that any of those members of a Garda Síochána, if they wanted to buy a can of paint,
yes,
they would not be denied that opportunity. So it's complete discrimination.
And the issue here is that the judge was quite dismissive of that point, as though, you know, we need to actually bring the man and his paint into court in order to... I said, well, we're simply trying to illustrate from a human point of view the situation out there on the streets being faced in the highways and byways and streets of Ireland by ordinary people. And this is our problem in one way. But on our, now I want to be very clear. You know, the judge is doing, I think, a good job of doing his job, which is to examine the evidence very thoroughly and put us under the, you know, the spotlight, and we have no difficulty whatsoever with that. And I believe we had a very successful day today. We're very happy with the way things went in general. I think that we've made all our points. We've argued back against the arguments of the other side very coherently, and I think convincingly, I think definitively. However, you know, there is a sense, as Gemma says, of unrealism really about this whole thing. It's as though this is entirely normal, and it's almost as if one is on RTE having a discussion on prime time about it. That it's entirely normative kind of set of circumstances, whereas it is actually the most egregious series of breaches of the Constitution in the history of the state. Lord Sumption last week, I cited this to the judge, and strangely, he didn't dismiss me on this when I mentioned Lord Sumption's name. He was quite open and accommodating about that, much more so than he was in relation to my friend and his paint. However, I said to him that Lord Sumption was asked, is this the worst set of breaches of rights and human freedoms since World War II? And Lord Sumption said, oh, it's much worse than that. He says there was nothing like this in World War II.
That's right.
He says people weren't locked in their houses in World War II. This is a former judge of the British Supreme Court, a very eminent jurist, a very eminent judge.
Smashing the protection we only have, John.
Yeah, so, I mean, my question to the judge is, you know, like, you see, there's an Article 28.3.3 which allows for the declaration of emergency. And this is the shocking thing, that in this endeavour they haven't chosen to go that route. And the reason is because it only allows for emergencies to be declared in times of war or armed rebellion. And that was the provision used in 1939 for what we remember and know as the emergency, for very good reason, because it was an emergency. This government is using the word emergency without having invoked this article at all. So they are entirely reliant on the normative articles of the Constitution to uphold the most draconian measures, as Lord Sumption says, ever in the history of Britain, and they're very comparable here in the history of Ireland. So this means that, in a sense, what they're saying is that all those years that we thought those constitutional rights, which are spent in the natural and ordinary meanings, offered us the protection from state power, state arbitrariness, state randomness, You know, they actually were not declarations of our rights at all. They were a charter for a totalitarian despotism. That is what what we seem to be asked to believe now. And if this is the case, I say to you, we're finished. Our country is finished. Our republic is finished. Our democracy is finished. The rule of law is finished in this society, in this country.
Not yet,
If
John.
we do not get leave, and if we do not win this action,
We will win.
that would mean that the Constitution has been suspended. Permanently, if necessary, because it is an important point. The judge asked at one point, he asked me, well, if the fact that there is a sunset clause, and I again stress, I'm not criticising the judge here, I'm simply saying, and he may well be just doing his job as, you know, a public prosecutor, if you like, of people who are seeking to use the courts in a certain way, and that's fine. But he said to me, if there is a sunset case, a sunset clause, is that not sufficient? And I said no, because this entire package of laws has now created a precedent and a pattern in our society. And indeed, I would say, an acquiescence in our society, which is quite the most shocking thing of all about this, that so many people have been bought off by the government with money, which will run out in a few weeks' time, and leaving all those people destitute. So many of them now without jobs, many of them without, you know, unable to pay their mortgages, in danger of losing their homes, many people bankrupt in their businesses, many people driven to extreme situations, extreme emotions, and you can imagine the kind of consequences that is what happens when these things happen. And there seems to be no calculus whatever in the government's deliberations about these matters about what might happen if we do this, and what kind of balancing process should be brought into play between what we're told will happen, which of course is a completely exaggerated hype beyond belief, and what will certainly happen if we close down the economy for 2 months, 3 months. What will happen then? And so,
And allow them to smash this Constitution.
Yes, well, what I am asking the court is really a very simple question. Is, you know, if this can be done, what is the point in having a constitution?
Yeah.
What is the difference between a constitution and no constitution?
That's right.
So this is where we are, and this is so I believe we have to. We have done a very good, I think, job of presenting our arguments. We have another battle tomorrow. At the end of that, the judge presumably will then deliberate. I believe that there can be no other decision here other than that we get leave. I think that's absolutely essential for the future of our democracy
Is good.
and our freedoms and our republic. And I cannot imagine that any judge, no matter what his view of us, of Gemma or of me, would conclude that other than that, this is, as Lord Sumption said, the most shocking incursion.
And I think today, John,
rights.
we possibly felt, you know, there was a number of occasions during which we felt the judge was questioning our bona fides, you know, when we went into the very specific details of how citizens now have to live their lives and the restrictions that have been placed upon them, which I don't think the courts and the officers of the court in there that you're all paying massive wages, I don't think they fully appreciate that. And, you know, there were a number of occasions when we felt that the judge may have been a little bit dismissive. We believe that it is patently clear to a 9-year-old child that the Constitution has been breached in so many aspects. Take, for example, the fact, I may have said this earlier, so apologies if I have. We know that citizens who live in the north